Okay, this whole voter ID thing has gotten absurd. They're saying uh they're saying on the news, and big corporations are saying that, oh, it's going to make it harder for people to vote to require voter ID, and it's like, yeah, no, that's kind of the point. Like, you don't want everybody to be able to vote everywhere, and there not to be any sort of like any sort of like way of verifying that people are who they are. Now, the state where I live, that's been the law for as long as I can remember, probably going back into my parents' generation. And it's literally, you show them driver's license, you show them a state ID, anything like that, and that's how you vote. And it's kind of laughable to me that that's the case in any state, that there's any state that doesn't require ID, because you look in most European countries and they all require ID to vote, like all of them. Like, the fact that we don't require it here in some places still, like, that is asking for voter fraud. That is begging for voter fraud. And I mean, like, what do you need ID for? You need ID to buy alcohol, you need ID to put down payment on a house, put a down payment on a car. I'm sure you needed to open up a credit card, though I don't have one of those, thankfully. Um, let's see what else. You needed to get benefits. Like, what? Why would like you needed to get a job? You need to prove who you are to get a legit job. So, like, where's the logic in telling people that it's racist to say that they need an ID to vote? Like, everyone has an ID, and if you don't have an ID, like, it's not hard to get one. Like, sometimes it's slow because government's inefficient, but like, it's not hard to get an ID, and you should have an ID. Like, I don't think it even has to be a current ID. It can be an old one, as long as you haven't changed all that much in terms of body shape and stuff since then. Like, you haven't gained so much weight, or like your appearance hasn't changed drastically. But like, it just hurts me. And you see corporations like Coca-Cola and the MLB, and they're talking about like boycotting. Like, essentially, that's what they're doing. They're boycotting states that want to actually make sure that the voting is proper. Like, they're like, this isn't even like some Jim Crow crap. This is literally just like, okay, like, how do we prove who you are when you vote? Like, so that you can't go to multiple voting stations and vote, and like, vote. Like, it's just absurd to me. It's just completely absurd. And to say that minorities don't know how to get ID is just the most offensive, stupid crap I've ever heard in my life. Like, that's a really racist crap to say, that minorities can't get an ID. Like, why? Like, you're implying that they're all stupid, and that seems pretty racist to me. Like, aren't you guys supposed to be the guys who are fighting against racism? Obviously that's BS. That's not true. Democrats have never been against racism. But yeah, just outright lie. I hate it, man. It makes me so angry, and it just infuriates me. Like, this is such a basic thing. It's like, I don't know. There's other stuff that I could list, but that's all I really wanted to say on this. It's just so stupid, so freaking stupid. And like, there's only one reason they want this. There's only one reason, and like, as well as I what that reason is. Like, why would you want a voter system where it can't be proven who the voters are, and it's basically unaccountable to anyone? I mean, the other issue with our whole voting system, honestly, is there's no paper trail with a lot of the election machines. Like, a lot of them are computerized. Like, all of them should be paper slips. None of it should be computerized. None of it should be like they've already proven the machines aren't reliable. Like a lot of them are ancient, like really old machines too. But even the new ones aren't that great. Like really, it would be much better if they had a paper system so that we had a paper trail going to each of the election offices, so that if there is some sort of fraud, it can be investigated. But we don't have any of that. None of this stuff is documented in a lot of places. Like it'd be so easy to defraud the system, so easy. Like they've made it child's play to defraud the system. And like people are like 70 some percent of Americans are for voter ID. So you can't even make the case that Americans don't support voter ID because a majority of them do. And the ones that don't support voter ID, I don't know what they're thinking. Like, why don't we get rid of voter ID for everything? Like, you don't need ID to buy alcohol anymore. But let's do that. Let's get rid of ID to buy alcohol and ID to buy a car and ID to get a job so that like we don't know who anyone is and because you know that like if they did that, they would go back on it in a second because it just wouldn't work. It would be a disaster. Because you have to go back and be able to like tie this to people. Like, man, it just makes me so angry. And like, I'm not even in a conservative state. I'm in a very liberal state, and they've had voter ID for years. Like, there's just no reason. There's no reason to not have it. And if they ever said tomorrow that they were going to get rid of it, then there'd be a freaking uproar in my state. And like I said, it's not even a conservative state. This is a very liberal state. But that's all I wanted to mention, man. I heard that on the news, and that just made me absolutely crazy. Like, oh my gosh, man. Like really, we're getting into some really basic crap here. Like really basic. But oh man, it's gonna give me an aneurysm thinking about this stuff. Anyway, that's the end of the video. Just keep all that in mind when you're thinking about this. I can't make all of your decisions for you, but just whenever you're going into any of these issues, don't go into it with a political stance immediately. Like look at the issues yourself and make your own decisions. Like don't be one of those people who just believes everything the media says. I mean, like there's people I trust and like I don't even agree with them all the time. So anyway, I'm going to end the video because that's all I really wanted to say.